the election results, we have that. We should not for a second take the transition for granted or fail to recognize just how important it is and how special it makes us and really separates us from other governments around the world. At the end of any election, federal, state, municipal, the peaceful transition of power is at the very heart of what makes America great. Second, each of us, and most importantly our friends in the press, can say whatever we want about the results in this election, but we will ask questions of one another and demand answers. We will analyze, we will pontificate, and we probably will second guess for months to come. Some of us will be loud, some thoughtful, some angry, some resigned, but we will, as Americans, be united in our cherished ability to say what we want. Third, I believe that coming out of a period of partisan discord, we can and will return our focus to what unites us. At the core of this election, and perhaps at the core of the results that we saw, was the very large portion, a very large portion of our country feels left behind or left out. They feel like they are no longer sharing equally in our nation's promise of prosperity. We may disagree on how to fix that, but the feeling is shared among people of different races, religions, genders, states, and political parties. Now we can work to understand and even embrace that dynamic in our country, and we need to work together to fix it, because we all deserve to participate in the American dream. Many people will be asking themselves what comes next. Put simply, we continue to work. We take care of our children. We remember that regardless of party, that there are good people working hard at every level of government, good people working hard at business, both large and small, to grow jobs and improve our economy. Good people working hard in their spare time to make their communities, their schools, and their world a better place. Here in Connecticut, we are presented with a unique opportunity to once again lead by example for our nation. In recent years, we have come together across party lines on many important issues. Now, with a different dynamic at play in the legislature, we have the opportunity and even the obligation to work even better together to find even more common ground. To that end, I plan to invite legislative leaders from both parties to begin informal discussions in the weeks ahead about how we move forward together. We should sit together around a table and have frank discussions of our goals, but more importantly, of how we achieve those goals, how we can change the ways we work together, share ideas, and make progress. Connecticut can show the country that we can continue to make progress even when we feel divided. We can demonstrate that it is possible to fight hard throughout a tough election and then get back to the work that the people have elected us to do. With that, I'll take a few questions.
It's no secret, Governor, that the Republican strategy was to aim their criticism at you, even though you weren't on the ballot, and to make these gains that they've obviously made in the General Assembly membership. How do you feel about that? It's obviously a repudiation of your tendency in this office.
Well, I mean, listen, we control, there are more Democrats serving in the House than there are Republicans, and there's apparently an equal number serving in the Senate. So they clearly did not reach the goals that they had aspired to reach, and that says as much about the argument as anything else. I think people appreciate that we have a good life in Connecticut, and we need to, on the other hand, we need to continue to make progress on big, important issues.
But in these races that they turned, you were the target.
Well, I've been the target a long time.
What is your feeling about the 18-18 split and how things will be in the Senate going forward?
Well, again, we have the Lieutenant Governor who will play a role. On the other hand, we came very close to having a truly bipartisan or nonpartisan budget last year. And it fell apart over relatively tiny things that shouldn't have separated people. There'll be new leadership in the House. There'll be a different vibe to the Senate. Let's try to work together. And I keep saying bipartisan. Maybe we should just work in a nonpartisan way.
Clinton didn't do as well in Connecticut as or Latinos in
I think it's a little early to understand that, quite frankly, and so I'm not sure I necessarily buy into that. So I can't explain something that I don't necessarily have enough information about.
Governor, as part of the reason for this sit-down, will you need to know the Republicans' intention, whether they will share responsibility for the next budget, so you can guide Ben Barnes as to what you put together?
Well, so let me say, I'm willing to sit collectively or individually with leaders of both parties, for that matter with members of both parties who are serving in the state Senate and the legislature. You know, I have spoken to the Democratic leadership, presuming a new speaker. I've spoken to both of the Republican leaders and expressed a willingness to sit down and talk. They have been, you know, it's funny, go back to the first question, they've been fairly complimentary of our ability to make progress when we do talk, when we do have those discussions. So we should continue to have those nonpartisan discussions.
So the harder discussion is going to have to be with the Democrats than the Republicans. I mean, based on how things went last year, I mean, you seem to side in a lot of these policies and a lot of the budget debate with the Republicans.
You know, listen, I think on human policy, domestic policy, social policy, I am extremely progressive. I think on budgetary policy, I may be more conservative than some of my Democratic colleagues. I mean, after all, I led a city for 14 years that had a AAA bond rating and didn't have things in contracts that are in contracts on a statewide basis, and never gave those things up. We have real issues to confront in Connecticut, not the least of which is difficulties with respect to funding, not the least of which is the failure of my predecessors and the legislature to have assured the proper funding of pensions and post-employment benefits. We need to take this issue on. I have, you know, every day that I have been governor, I have recognized that that is one of our chief issues. We have made major progress, but we are required to make more progress in the coming budget and in the coming years.
Do you anticipate any difficulties in advancing your legislative agenda, your budgeting vision, now that we have some of the, I guess, the most closest party divisions, political divisions in the legislature since the 1965 restructuring? So I'm just wondering, where we've been here before, where we've seen this closer, where there are groups of Democrats that go off and say, well, I'm off the package unless I get such and such, or Republicans. I mean, I'm just.
You can give me a little bit to comment on, not the whole thing. What I would say to you is I think it may be easier for me to accomplish my policy goals with respect to the budget and the progress that needs to be made if we do that in a nonpartisan way.
You're the titular head of the Democratic Party. Some of the Democrats I've spoken to last night and today blame independent expenditures on the loss. Is that a mistake? If that's the only lesson they draw from this is the mechanism of campaign finance, is that a mistake for your party?
Well, let's be very clear. With the election of a new president, independent expenditures are not going to go away. Let me put it in the broader context, and then I've never fought you about asking follow-ups. So it's quite clear that we will permanently live in a post-Citizens United world. And I think it's an oversimplification of the issue. I said before, and I'll say it again, people who had an opponent who went door to door and they didn't go door to door, they lost. People who lost overwhelmingly were outworked by their opponent regardless of party. For instance, Democrats picked up some seats too. You can't change the dynamic of an election. It is a personal choice that you're asking people to make. You have to offer yourself personally to the public. You have to knock on their doors, you have to be in contact, you have to make yourself available. And I think overwhelmingly, these elections on the legislative side were individual elections and should not be assumed to be part of a collective. For instance, go back down the eastern part of the state. There were independent expenditures in support of a candidate who lost, very substantial. So I mean, you offer yourself to the public, and they make a decision. And if you offer yourself well, more often than not, you're going to win.
Governor?
Sure.
Can I ask Governor Wyman a question regarding the breakdown of the Senate? The last time it was tied was 1893. Article 4, Section 17, you've been reading that this
Not
morning?
yet, but I'm sure I'm gonna get to it.
How do you understand how there's gonna be some kind of leadership? I mean, the way it reads is like they happen to know it says his office.
My voice is deep enough.
Casting votes, I mean, so is somebody gonna nominate Marty for President Pro Tem, and then that the vote will come, and then you'll break the tie? Is that what you
I have not read what you said, but in my discussions this morning, that seems the way it would be. There would be a break, and I'd have to break the tie on Marty being the Senate Pro Tem. And I can tell them now, he's got my vote.
You said that she's going
Sure.
to play a bigger role, but it's widely known by all of us that there's at least 2 Democrats in the caucus in the Senate who don't necessarily toe the line. So she might not get to vote at all.
Well, listen, you know what? Today's a day to reflect on the fact that we've completed a process and that we are celebrating the peaceful transition of government on a national basis, and on a state basis there'll be some changes. How that all works out, none of us can foretell. But let me just finish.
Do you not feel it is a repudiation of you?
No, I don't.
Even though that's the way they campaign?
I'm going to go back to something I just said. These are individual decisions that are made. People who work really hard tend to get elected. People who get outworked tend to lose. For instance, if Republicans didn't run ads that said crime is at a 50-year crime is at a 50-year low, or that graduation rates are increased, or that we have more Black and Latino children taking AP courses than ever before, or that we've made more investment in our highways. People pick and choose the things that they want to do, and quite frankly, when I run for office, I've done the same. That's what these elections are. But they are individual contests, and I think if you scratch the surface, I certainly went back a couple of years ago and looked at those races, and overwhelmingly the people who get outworked lose. I mean, right over here.
Well, I can get a follow-up.
You
can get also
oh yeah, you
follow
can.
up.
I'm not fighting with you. No, I know, but she hasn't had a question. Let's be nice.
Thank you, and I am ill. I wondered what your party should take from this. While the Republicans made big gains in the legislature, the Blumenthal and the whole congressional delegation were swept in. What did Democrats take from this in Connecticut? It must seem kind of strange.
Well, I mean, I think, listen, we had great candidates for the United States Senate and Congress, and I don't think anyone anticipated that those folks were not going to be reelected. I don't think the people who were running against them anticipated they weren't going to be defeated. So, I mean, I think it's, we can't mix every race with everything else. These are standalone races. When, after this young guy gets voted.
On the national race, you talked about people feeling left behind. What's your message for the 40-something% of people that voted for Trump in Connecticut, maybe because they felt that way?
I think that we have attempted to be more equal in Connecticut, and I think we've had success in being more equal in Connecticut, and I think we should continue.